Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles, Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast, the podcast for special educational needs and disability. Each week we'll be talking about a different topic within the world of SEND to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools and to empower parents. In this episode we discussed bridging the gap with parents and carers. Schools, social care and health services may feel they're working really well in partnership with parents. But do parents feel the same? Is it working? And my guest this week was Rachel Wright, the founder of Born at the Right Time and host of the Skies We're Under podcast. Rachel is a qualified nurse and the parent of neurodiverse and profoundly disabled sons. Born at the Right Time is about bridging the gap between families and services. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and Eversense is one of our products that helps celebrate and you can share all this stuff going on in school with parents and engage those parents. But don't take my word for it. Hear from one of our schools who use Eversense. And they said teachers can communicate with home much more easily using Eversense, and this has proved to be much better than previous homeschool communication books. Teachers can provide additional information to parents efficiently by responding via the app. Parents now send photos of students learning in the home community environments too, so you get that big view from home. And also some students have requested access to their Eversense records so they can check on their own learning, which is fantastic. To find out more, visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me, and I can take you through what Eversense can do and how it can help you. Now, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing bridging the gap with parents and carers. This week, my guest is Rachel Wright, the founder of Born at the Right Time and host of the Skies We're Under podcast, which has recently reached episode 100, so congratulations. Rachel is a qualified nurse and the parent of neurodiverse and profoundly disabled sons, and Born at the Right Time is about bridging the gap between families and services. Rachel's experience from both sides of the bed inspire and create hopeful change for anyone supporting someone with complex disabilities. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello.
You're welcome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So, first question, how does it feel being the guest and not the host?
Well, takes decidedly less preparation, although I'm not, that probably puts a judgment as to how much preparation you have put into this episode.
And will I have to warn you, you're being too hosty?
Yeah, I was early, which again is fairly unheard of whenever I'm the person that's hosting it, as I'm like frantically going, oh, I've got someone waiting.
Well, I was 2 minutes late, even though I'd set an alarm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I set an alarm as well, but I set my alarm 15 minutes early.
That's what I did, which was enough time to then get distracted.
You've got to set the alarm, don't you?
Yes.
This is to remind you this thing's coming up, and this is to remind you it's now.
Yes. No, there's a thing on the door in the studio over there which tells me to do something before I finish and leave.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm trying to be organised, and I'm rubbish at it. Okay, so I'm going to start off this podcast by mentioning a video clip that I saw on LinkedIn recently that you recorded a few years ago, apparently.
Yeah.
It's a short clip in response to things you were told you needed to do by professionals.
Yes.
And I've put a link to the clip on Instagram in the show notes so others can watch it. Can you just tell our listeners about this clip?
So my eldest son is now 19 years old, and he is what I like to call bespoke. So he has very specific, complex needs. So that means he requires support for everything about his life. He can't sit on his own. He can't feed himself. He doesn't have a safe swallow, so he's fed through a tube in his stomach. He has visual impairment. He has a very strong addiction to the game show Pointless, laughs from his toes to the top of his head, and has a very eclectic music sense. And his life is sort of revolves around music. This particular occasion where the video was recorded, my son had been fed via a tube in his stomach from the age of 14 months when we were told in a corridor at Great Ormond Street Hospital that we were no longer to feed him orally because his swallow was unsafe. So I was told that as people were scooting past us on X-ray trolleys, that we would no longer have Christmas dinners with him, that he wouldn't eat ice creams at the beach, that we wouldn't have birthday cakes. And so from that day onwards, he was initially fed through a tube in his stomach called an NG tube. And then later he had a peg inserted, which is as tubes directly into his stomach via his abdomen wall. And that had been working pretty well. The smell of the, pharmaceutically made, I can smell it now. And the fact that all the vomits that have occurred in the following 15 years smelt exactly the same. It was delightful. But that had served him pretty well. And then as he was in his early teens, so 13, 14, 15, his reflux was getting much worse. So he'd always suffered from reflux. It got worse when the fluid that we were feeding him with was more soft and more runny. And so we got to the point that he was having to be on his feed pump for a long period of time. So he was potentially up to 20 hours a day. They were talking about putting the tube into his bowel rather than his stomach. So we were having investigations for this. And the only thing that I felt like we hadn't tried was something called a blended diet, where instead of getting nutrition from a pharmaceutical industrial lab, you take the food that you've cooked the rest of the family, you shove it in a blender, you blend it up with some, milk, apple juice, whatever it might be, get it to the right consistency and shove that down the tube instead.
Probably not shove that. It's probably a more technical term.
You might use a syringe. Yeah. So you put that down the tube instead. And so I'm a nurse by training, and my husband's a GP. So we're very medicalized in this house. And I remember thinking, well, this is a bit hippie and woo-woo, just taking food and giving it to your child. But we really had it's mad now that I think about it, the kind of the medicalized sort of ideas that we had sort of institutionalized sort of perspective that we'd had. But we thought we need to do this because at the minute we're talking about my son reducing his quality of life because he wouldn't be able to get the swimming in, he wouldn't be able to get the stander in, we wouldn't be able to go out, he would have to be in certain positions to be in the feed. It was impacting his actual quality of life. So let's try this blended diet, even though it's more work for us. So we went to the dietitian and we said, we want to try this blended diet. There's guidance out by the institution for dietitians, the association for dietitians even. And the dietitian was a little bit old school, and she sent us this email saying, we're unable to support you until you have completed all these forms and signed this document. And one of these documents said that they would that we were putting our child at risk of peritonitis, which is a potentially fatal condition. There's no real medical founding, particularly based on that, especially more than any other sort of any other way of administering via a peg, food or liquid via a peg. I was also told that they would want to come and inspect the kitchen, and they would advise me they'd like me to do an online food hygiene certificate. I took a bit of a reaction to this list of requests, and I was proper ragey. I'd recorded that video and I was proper, my heart was pounding, my hands and it was just this sense of, I am sick and tired of being told what to do. I'm so tired of everybody who isn't in my life actually doing all the work, having the authority to dictate what my life is like. And it's something that's a really common experience for families of any child with SEM, but particularly with the more complex disabilities, because we have so many specialists. I sat down about 5 years ago and wrote down all the people that I communicate with about my son, and I counted over 80. So if let's take half of them or even a quarter of them decide to tell me to do something in any particular way, it can feel like a massive bombardment. It's and the mismatch between I don't have the authority in my life to do things, but I have all the responsibility. And the professionals that are working with us have all the authority, but none of the responsibility to actually carry it out. And so that video came out of an absolute sense of an exasperation, but also there was a deeper I've reflected on my reaction to that. And I think it's something that touches on many families, particularly when they're trying to work with practitioners in SEN, particularly within education. One of the things that on reflection, I think that was happening at the time, there was the very practical, I can feed McDonald's to my other kids every single day and no one's going to bat an eyelid unless they become, unable to do something or whatever. Like, that's not even going to be registered. But it's not just the scrutiny, but in my mind, I had told a story of myself that I was not quite the mum that I should have been or could have been because I stopped feeding my son. So one of these aspects of mothering that I had in my head as to what I would do as a mother would be that in the kitchen, I would create nutritious meals. I had my Anna Carmel book when we were weaning him that told me all the things. I turned my kids orange because I had so many carrot-based blended, mushy food.
Yep.
And when I had that appointment on Great Ormond Street corridor telling me never to feed my son again, there was a bit of my mothering that was taken away from me. And the reason I got so ragey, one of the reasons I got so ragey when I got the news that they wanted me to do all these forms and whatever, was that I had a glimpse of getting that mothering back. And I had some professionals telling me that I couldn't have it. And I think so often when we're thinking about bridging the gap, so much of sometimes we don't even see the context of why something is traumatic or difficult or really challenging to a parent carer, because it's so built up with a story they're telling themselves, or an experience they had 10 years ago, or an expectation and a dream they had long before their child was born. And it isn't the conversation that's right in front of your eyes.
No.
There's layers and layers and layers of it. So yeah, I was proper peed off that day. I was raging.
For a really good reason. I watched it I think it's until your child has special needs, until you're kind of having those challenges, you're a bad parent until you get, and it's that, and then no one can relate to you. It's like, he's not going to school, just take him in.
Yeah.
And no one ever understands. And I think you're kind of at that pinnacle of no one understands.
No.
And it was a really powerful insight in, I just want to feed my son.
Yeah.
What? And I'm literally going, you're a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't know how old your son was at the time, but listening to her going, so you've been looking after him for 14 years. You probably kind of went,
I know what I'm doing.
I kind of know what I'm doing. And it was.
I wasn't asking to chuck him out of an aeroplane.
No. Have you?
I was asking him to give him food. Like, I was asking, is there a way you could help me decide what's the best, most nutritious food that I can give him when, I have to think about volumes and whatever else? And to begin with, we paid for private advice from a dietitian. One thing being the parent of someone with very complex disabilities has done is I'm very good at a complaint letter. So that is finally honed. So we did that. That was a beautiful piece of work. And then we cracked on with paying for somebody to give us advice, and we did the blended diet ourselves. And it kind of, to add insult to injury, it was one of the best things we ever did for him. And I am absolutely kicking myself that it didn't happen 15, 16 years earlier, because it has changed he stopped some medication. He reduced other medication. He stopped needing bowel medication for constipation because we just added fruit into his diet. His gut health, it made huge difference. Skin, hair, managing his weight, all of it got better.
Wow.
And yet we had to fight.
I think there are lots of parents not on the scale you're talking about and not in that context of feeding. There will be some who listen to this going, yeah. But there are others who are maybe thinking about emotional-based school avoidance and being told by professionals, You're wrong, just do this, it's your fault, you don't know what you're doing. And I always get that parents know their child best. And it's like they do. But on the flip side, those professionals have seen more children and probably have gone, so it's not a case of one is better. It should be a collaborative approach.
Different levels, different types of expertise
Yes.
that only together can bring about the right answer.
And all should be respected.
Yeah. And I think that taps into what you're saying there. I think one thing I realised, so some of my other sons, I have many just floating around, but some of my other sons have got neurodiverse, and so I'm approaching Senkos within mainstream schools and stuff. But I bring all my baggage from my other son.
You're ready for the fight.
Yeah, exactly. You've
got your complaint letter.
You're
Exactly.
I have my template there. But it's this systems generated trauma that the emerging research is coming out about. Luke Clements and his colleague Anna Aiello, who we actually had Anna on the podcast at the beginning of this year, and it's the same. For practitioners and for services to say they're trauma informed, but actually, when they miss the fact that the inherent structures of the system, whether that is school avoidance, whether that is requiring support from social services and wanting them to inspect their child's bedroom and have conversations without the parent carers there, because there is this underlying assumption of mistrust and safeguarding and all this other stuff, is systems generated trauma. It is the actual action or inaction of the service is what is further traumatizing parent carers right across the spectrum of very complex needs to those children who are needing extra and additional support within mainstream schooling.
So my daughter is kind of the end of the spectrum. She's autistic. She's in a GCSE year. She has had so many mocks this year already. She is just drained and tired. And she's kind of making mistakes. And she went, yes, I know this exam was supposed to give me this much time for this question, but I had to read it all. And that took 20 minutes. And I'm listening to her and I'm going, you probably just need some extra time. Talk to people. Oh, yeah, you should be able to get extra time. And I wrote to the Senko. And the Senko wrote back and basically went, but she's not failing.
I know.
And I'm like, why does my daughter have to fail? Why does she then need to get the support? Because it's not like, oh, yeah, you're right. I will do the GCSEs next week. It's once a year. Why does my daughter need to fail her GCSEs to then get the support to pass them, to continue with her career? I find some professionals, there are amazing professionals.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's kind of, we lose the personal touch. We look at a piece of paper in front of us and forget anything else about it. We forget timescales. We forget dreams. We forget wants. We forget the responsibility. We forget the person who's standing in front of me wanting to ask me to feed their son McDonald's through a tube. Have you fed him McDonald's through a tube?
Of course we have.
Excellent.
Get the calories in.
Oh, yes. But asking to do that and then going, yeah, I'm not sure, but they have been with him for 14 years. He's still alive.
Yeah.
They're doing
and actually,
at least something
he's still alive
right.
Because we have been doing a heck of a lot. Like, don't want to put it down on it, but none of his peers are. He was in a preschool group of about 5 little boys who were all very complex, and he is the only one still alive. So he is here because of what we've done, not in spite of.
And yet, that when you got that piece of paper, that I think that isn't being taken into account as much as it should.
But I think it's the stuff that you're saying there, as far as the SEN system works on, you have to keep trying it until it fails. So my 17-year-old is doing his A-levels this year, and we had the same issue with school around year 8 or 9 when he was diagnosed with dyslexia. And again, I think we let that slide. I think we may have missed the boat a little bit on that one. Partly because of his older brother, we were like, you talk, you walk, woohoo, like it's fine. But we're privileged to be able to say, we're going to get this assessment and we'll get the input you need, and we'll articulate ourselves and we'll argue for what is required. But again, they initially did his assessments and said, oh no, he's kind of coming out all right. But the specialist assessment we got was measuring where he could be. And so they sort of said, look, his attainment is in the top 90s, But what he's getting is the 50s, 60s because of the processing, because of the dyslexia, because of the everything else. He is capable and has the cognition to achieve, but these things need to be put in place in order to enable them to happen. And again, we've had to go through the process. He's been changed to a different sixth form. And I needed a couple more. They worked really hard. You know, you find the one teacher or the one person who gets them, listens to you, and is prepared to be your person within the system. And it's a completely different game. But you want to capture that person. Definitely. I mean, not capture them. That would be really bad. Like, don't kidnap them. That might not help the situation. But yeah. Other than that, like just yeah.
But I do think it's, and I also know that if you, so we knew my daughter was autistic from an early age. There were signs. Mm-hmm. We supported everything we could see. We tried to do things. We really tried to support them without. We hadn't taken into account naively. It's really obvious now, kind of what was going on inside her head that we couldn't see. So we really mucked up there.
Yeah.
But because we put all that support in, and like as soon as it's announced, it was, we're going to have a wear your own clothes day on Friday. As soon as that email came in, I would look at my day and go, I need to get out of here at 3 p.m. My daughter's going to be stressed because she's got nothing to wear. And kind of, I knew everything. Because we knew everything, we supported everything. Mm-hmm. She appeared fine in school. But now we're getting to that point where everything is now, no matter what we're doing at home, it's all bubbling over.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with her.
No.
And it's like, so what you're saying is if I'd done less, if I'd supported less, if I'd let her fail.
If she was more dysregulated in your environment, you'd be happier.
Yeah.
And then we'd get the support. She'd get the support. Because it's behaviour-driven strategies rather than needs-based strategies. So, or provision. Because, my youngest is... Well, he's not my youngest. My 9-year-old is...
You do have a...
My 9-year-old.
How many?
So a 19-year-old with very complex needs, a 17-year-old doing his A-levels, a 9-year-old who is at mainstream, has really struggled the last couple of years and is in the process of having a diagnosis for neurodiversity. 24-year-old who we adopted into the family, who used to be a carer for my eldest and is now firmly in adopted daughter scenario and been living with us since 2020. And recent addition is a 2-year-old. Because, do you want the full story of the 2-year-old?
The full story. I don't want to know about that.
Well, the full story is not what you're thinking. I have a very good friend who was also a PA for my eldest son, but about 10 years ago. She very sadly was diagnosed with breast cancer and she died in August last year, and we're now parenting her 2-year-old. So there you go. You asked. So that's my life.
And that... Wow. So August,
So we have a very eclectic mix of people in our home.
I think what you've got called is a royal flush. I think that's the correct terminology.
It's a royal something. I'm not sure flush definitely would not be what I describe our family as.
Do you have this? Yes. Do you have this? Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah, but I bet you don't have this. I do.
My 17-year-old described it recently. He said, our family is like season 12 of a series that really should have stopped at season 6. They're just throwing storylines at it to try and keep people engaged.
Really unbelievable ones.
Who can we... It's like, what can we do? Yeah.
I watch Gogglebox quite a bit. It's a great way to just watch some TV without watching any TV.
Yeah.
And every so often you'll get something from EastEnders or Coronation Street, which is just, oh my God, this is ridiculous. It's probably that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like the train crash in Corrie or the sinking boat in EastEnders, because of course.
But we're very lucky. That means we've got a house that is overflowing. Oh, and we just got a Labrador. So we decided to add to our grief and our overwhelm with a chocolate Labrador puppy. So, yeah. So that means when I do go to services and I ask for something, I maybe am a little bit at the end of my tether already.
Yes. My sister, she was struggling with her son, autism, wasn't really kind of getting the support, and they said, oh, perhaps you should go on this parenting course.
Mm.
So she went there, and basically every other parent was there due to their child's drug or alcohol abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, why are you here? My son's autistic.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, why did we go there? Well, it's because parents didn't set boundaries. They're like, yeah, that's not the... And then they went through and just went on. And then somebody came around and bought them some books they should read about parenting. And my sister brought out her dog-eared version she's had for years. And I've tried all that, none of them work.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think sometimes people, there are families who go, you tell them your child's autistic and they've gone, I've done nothing, I've no idea. This is where we start. But other parents, you should be able to quite quickly go, oh, yeah, actually, you're on book 5 of this series. Yeah. Without me even saying anything. You're so far down this journey already. Let me start where you are.
Yeah, well, I think we should be doing let's start. I think that's where the bridging the gap happens. So co-production, collaborative working always has to start with where the person is. But I think we have to, in doing that, take a breath and recognize our own privileges and our own bias in our assumptions about what the person is opposite us. They're from that estate, that means this. They have a degree in this, that means this. They, walk in with a file and some high heels, that means this. They walked in their tracky bottoms and their slippers, that means this. We build up the narratives, don't we, of what people are bringing. Everybody, it's an inherent human nature to do that, because that's how we order people. That's how we can make decisions without having to do the finer details. We pick up all these things, but we have to stop ourselves and question what those subconscious biases are that's preventing us from really hearing what is being said by the person opposite us. And I think it's very easy, like you say, there's an expertise of having dealt with lots of different families, and that gives you a depth of expertise, but potentially it also has the opportunity to fuel entrenched thinking about what the right thing, the next thing, the thing that's going to work, without stopping and first centering yourself in the experience of the person and the family that you're trying to support.
And with my daughter, I should have a bad day at school and somebody said this, and I always had to remind her that when someone's saying something to you, it's not about you, it's a reflection of them. So when we are judging those people, when we're thinking about, actually, is it about them, or is it actually they might know what they talk about and I don't feel confident?
Yeah.
For that parent, is this person going to give me no help?
Yeah.
Is it going to be another? It's about them.
Yeah.
And the moment you kind of see something which will make you think they're going to do what you thought, you just, I knew it.
I knew it. Confirmation bias. I knew that's what was going to happen. And you seek out all the different bits of the nuggets, the little breadcrumbs of information that's like, I knew that's where I was heading.
But I think you might go to a room with 4 or 5 professionals telling you about your feeding of your son, and they're sitting there going, it's another patient. You'll walk out and I won't see you again. Blah, 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 blah. We just need to do this. But you sitting there as a parent, this is your child's life. This is, for you, actually, that much more than ever, that quality of life. If we do this, we can do it. If we don't, it will mean all those sorts of things. So no matter how professional they think it is a very personal meeting.
Yes.
And I do think sometimes professionals can forget that actually what is the meaning of this. And you talked about earlier about that bit about you being a mum and not being able to feed your son being taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're told your child is autistic, when you're told your child is dyslexic, when you're told your child can't do something, especially if you're not fully understanding why and your child's struggling at school, you're thinking they can't, you then start mourning. In that moment, you're hearing that actually all those future things I thought my son or child would have isn't going to happen. They're not going to get that lovely job. They're not going to be the pilot. They're not going to do that. Then you start mourning that in that moment, and you're trying to keep hold of it. So there's so many emotions going through that parent's mind.
You're replaying the hologram of a life that you were never promised but always expected.
Yeah.
And you didn't even realise you expected it until you were told those milestones could not be assumed.
Yes.
And in doing so, I think the potential is when you work in services And you've got to learn how to approach people with humanity without taking on their trauma, because otherwise you become absolutely fruitless in your job also. But you can unwittingly normalize challenge and struggle and difficulties that you expect are okay for people and for others. And you normalize the sort of difficulties that are being faced, or everyone knows that midwife who's done 50 too many deliveries because they're like, oh, just for goodness sake, push that baby out. Because they have been to however many, and they're like, I've been here before, and they've got, they've lost the empathy, whatever. But for that mother, this is the moment they will remember for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
Independent. And for so many scenarios and conversations I have, and the reason that I do the work that I do is because you can do all sort of fangled therapies or days or opportunities or fancy pieces of equipment or whatever, but the single most important you can do to improve my life on a day-to-day basis is talk to me with respect and work with me and collaborate with me. So that connection and that communication is where the power and the empathy lies. And it is too easy, again, for lots of good reasons, to fall down your own. I did some training recently for some specialist teachers, so for visual impairment and for audio impairment, or what do I want to call that?
Hearing impairment?
That's the one. Hearing impairment. I was going, audio, something, stereo. Anyway, hearing impairment. And one of them said to me, I kind of realised what you said hit home, because I kind of realised at one point I was supporting a parent whose child was blind in one eye, so severely visually impaired in one eye, and they were really distressed. And she said, thankfully it didn't come out of my mouth, but in my head I was going, what's the matter? It's only one eye. Because she spends her whole life seeing children with way more complex issues. Both eyes, not just the eyes, also have these difficulties, not just this, but living in poverty, not just that, but actually a refugee from Syria, not just that, the layers and the layers and layers. And you're like, what's the matter with you? It's just one eye. But in doing that, you've just got such a warped perspective. And it requires, again, that breath to stop, center the person and see their humanity, not the diagnoses that can roll off your tongue and can make sense to you.
I think it's important there, that context. So what is a great day for me and what is a really bad day for me is probably quite different to someone who's just got over the English Channel in a tiny boat.
Absolutely.
The person waiting to get on that boat at the other in France. Yeah. The person who's had some really bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although what my great day and what someone else's doesn't mean my bad day isn't bad.
No.
Yeah,
no,
it's not a top
competition.
Trumps game.
No,
yeah.
It's not.
It's within the context of that is devastating news. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes my husband doesn't put the bins out. I know.
Is he still alive?
He is. Actually, it's not a blue job in our house. It is something that everyone does. But it's that same thing, isn't it? But I do remember whenever my son was really young and we were dealing with life and death decisions and situations with him all the time, that I could not cope with people complaining about their washing machine being broken. Actually, my own grief and my own loss and the emotions that I was living, I felt unable to be empathic also.
Yeah.
Because I was consumed by my own story. And I think that's okay too. Because we can only be what we are. In health services, they talk about personalised care and lots of the different characteristics of personalised care. One of the questions that they suggest you ask is not what's the matter with you, which you might get asked as soon as you're sitting down at a GP surgery, should you manage to get one of those elusive appointments. But you sit down and instead of what's the matter with you, you say what matters to you. And that's the same when it comes to, I think, any conversation. If you are a clinician, within a school, within a local authority, working in SEN, in all sorts of, if you can tap into what matters to that person at that moment, even if you can't fix it, the fact that you've asked, that you were then here and respond to, and they feel seen and heard, you will have a more fruitful conversation, whatever that is.
Yes. And that's the thing is, a lot of time people are having different conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the parent is going, what does my son's future look like?
Yep.
And the questions you're asking, you're kind of hinting towards actually what's their future looking like. But what that professional might be hearing is, what does next week look like? What does right now look like?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, and there's that whole, that pupil voice, child-centered approach. What do you want to do? And Ali Knowles talked about with grief, it was like a child's grandparent had died and they were really sad. And everyone assumed it was about the grandparent dying.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that grandparent took him to football each week. And because the grandparent wasn't there, he thought he was going to miss football, and he really loved football. He was sad about the grandparent, but he was sad that he thought he wasn't going to go to football now.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, what the conversation was, there was lots of assumptions, but why was he upset? Because he thought he was no longer able to go to football.
Yeah.
And you'll be going, but his granddad's died. I went, well, yes, he's probably sad about that. But actually, for kids...
Well, he possibly doesn't realise the enormity of that.
No.
Like they don't understand necessarily what the implications of death and the irreversibility of death. So that's too big a concept to have. And I think actually I question, I think so, very often in practitioner parent carer conversations, it's the other way around. I think the parent carers are so often the people who are in the moment thinking, I don't know how to get to tomorrow. And the practitioners are thinking, if you don't put this stuff in place, if you don't do these things, then I know what's on the horizon, and it's going to go horribly, horribly wrong if we don't, certainly within the lives of people with more complex disabilities. All these practitioners are able to project and see a future that you are so doggedly overwhelmed by the enormity of every minute and every day that you're on. Brené Brown talks about it, calls it horizon conflict. So I'm standing alongside the practitioners thinking about my son and his needs, and they are saying, look, if we don't put these things in place, if we don't start this stuff, if you don't put the effort in here or this, and this, then out there's choppy seas and it's going to get bad and it's going to get messy and we need to sort it out. And I'm standing in exactly the same spot. We might have shared values about my child. We might have shared expectations of what things are a priority and important, but all I can feel is the waves crashing against the water and spraying my face, because all I can do is look at the rocks below on this cliff edge. They're looking out on a future that I can't even imagine. I haven't got the capacity to.
When I was 29, my wife got diagnosed with cancer. Mm-hmm. And I was in that, I'm too young to be a widow. All those thoughts are going through, oh my God, everything. And we sat there, is it going to be chemotherapy or radiotherapy, and all those conversations. And I know exactly what I can basically just staring at the floor, words going on, not really listening. And he said, we're going to do chemo. I said, why is that? And he said, well, radiotherapy is kind of the side effects. So maybe 20 years' time, you don't want those side effects. And he's saying, I was like, what do you mean 20 years' time? Mm-hmm. Because you'd said cancer, it was all over in my head.
Yeah.
I was literally going, I've got a year left, 2 years left. What am I going to do with the kids? That's what my head was. And he was saying, what do you mean 20 years' time? And it was, the conversation, what I was worrying about, what he was worrying about, he was miles in the future. Yeah. He was like, looked at the sheet and went, this is all fine. Yeah. That's not where I was. And that's not where my wife was. No. We were going, we were just end of the world.
What's the next step?
And interesting, I'm sitting there thinking now going, we're 15 years on. So it is really interesting that at that point where I was, where my wife was, and where that consultant was, there was two different places. Yeah. And I kind of get it, because if you're taking on that trauma that we're feeling, you maybe be less effective, as you said. Yeah. So it is trying to find that happy, maybe not happy, middle ground.
Well, it is. It's because that's where those moments of connection, the meaningful connection, all the training that I deliver, we talk about meaningful connection, we talk about trauma, we talk about conflict, we talk about harnessing the knowledge of the lived experience in order to understand what's really going underneath the surface in order to create actionable next steps, because we can't do anything differently if we don't understand what's going on and why that makes a big deal. But in your context and those differences in horizon, it's about connecting with the humanity and the story of the person, like I said, without walking away with their trauma. And that's about empathy, which is not othering, not pity. Pity is like, oh, I'm so sorry for you because you're a different person to me and I don't. And it's not about walking in my shoes so that I carry the heartache of what you're going through. But it's being able to say, I can look in the whites of your eyes and presume competence, have, unconditional positive regard that you are doing the best you can with the time, energy, and resources that you have. And I'm going to meet you in that place and we're going to have this conversation. And if we can offer that both ways, then that's where the magic happens. But it comes at a place of real vulnerability. And that's not necessarily something that we're taught.
It's interesting. I'm rubbish at empathy because I can't see myself in those shoes. So I'm really... I remember going like a school trip and you go on some trip to World War One and you go into this bunker, it'd be pitch black and they have all these noise. You can really imagine what it's like. I'm like, no, I'm in a room with lights flashing and noise. I had a lunch half an hour ago. I'm quite warm. There's no rats. I'm not fearing for my life. No, I cannot relate to this at all. It's just a stupid exercise.
Oh, I can.
However, I am compassionate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In that room, it taught me nothing, but it made me think about all that. I went, you know what? Yeah, I'm compassionate, but I do struggle with that empathy. I can't always put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
I relate to things that maybe I've done. So as you talk about that, I was thinking about me and my wife. I'm going, okay, I can empathize on that now. Yeah. Other bits, I'm going, I've got no experience. Yeah. I don't know how you feel. And I'm not pitying you.
No, but that's the compassion. Yeah.
It's
we can get compassion fatigue. Like, especially, I think one of the reasons that we have to bridge the gap with an SEN, we've got this culture of discourse, of challenge between families and practitioners that often is bubbling under the surface, is that we have an implementation gap between what services say will be offered and what actually turns up, what you can get, the timeline for the EHCP, the expectation of the targets within the EHCP, the level of provision and what actually shows. You have trauma from a parent-carer point of view, this life, unlived life that they expected that they're not going to get, and the unraveling of that. And then we have like the silo working of the system. You have all these practitioners who are doing their job and they're working in their multidisciplinary team, but that multidisciplinary team just sit next to each other and do their own thing. And they're not communicating with each other and not working with each other. And from a practitioner perspective, working within that system where you're in the gap between what the parents are expecting and what they actually give, you're dealing with the rawness of their own trauma, and you're trying to navigate in this silo system of working. It can inherently reduce your capacity for compassion, because you yourself are then in a system of hypervigilance, hyperstress. Your body, your neocortex is shut down because your neurophysiology is saying, I am under threat here. I need to do this job. I need to not get harangued by my own manager. I need to not have this parent shout at me in the corridor again because I need to regulate this child. I need to, whatever all the expectations are on you. But it's understandable to get to the point of compassion being right at the bottom of your list, because you yourself are functioning in a highly stressful situation.
It'll be hard to find a Senko who is regulated. I'm going to just say the short version. But I think it is, when you're talking about that, we use it with children, regulated, dysregulated. They do things when they're dysregulated. And we know all that.
Yep.
And what you just talked about makes everyone dysregulated.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
parent coming in because they were promised something that's not been delivered, they're dysregulated.
Yeah.
Too dysregulated. Even if regulating, it's not going to go well.
No.
And
except I think it can go well if you connect with the person. If you don't connect with the role, if you connect with the Senko, then you'll be like, you've not done this. If you connect with Jenny, who might have been up with her daughter last night, who might have a grandmother who's just been taken into hospital, who has her own child at the school who's desperately trying to get home, even though they've got to wait for the next half hour and is kicking off already. If you connect with the person, I think our professionalism has pendulum swinged so far away from the connection with people, and we need to get back to the people.
It's
so
a thing
on both sides, if we see people and not problems.
I've said there's a lot of even teachers to the students, you've got to be that vulnerable. You've got to reveal things about you so you are seen as a human.
Yeah.
Because if you're not seen as a human, no one's going to connect to you.
No. And so there'll be way more likely to write a complaint letter.
Yeah. And and we've had people say that, they walked into the classroom and said, look, I'm having a really bad day. This is going to happen. I can't deal with you lot today. Please just get on with your work. Here's the work. And all the kids got on with their work. And at the end of it went, are you all right, miss?
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe that was a secondary school, but it was that she built that relationship up. She said those things and they went, yeah.
All right, we'll crack on.
But they saw that person as a human, not just a teacher.
It even works on 5-year-olds. I remember going as my now 17-year-old going, right, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. So that means that my ragey voice is going to come out much quicker if you don't do what you're told the first time. So how about we avoid the repeating things 6 times and we just do it straight away? Can we do that?
So, was this your 5-year-old or your husband doing the bins out?
The husband the bins. It is actually bin day today.
It's day Thursday. Yes, it's bin day for us too. And it is.
Oh.
Okay, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Off-piste.
Yeah.
Do you decide what is a pink job and a blue job, or does your husband have any choice in it?
I don't decide pink jobs. We don't generally have pink jobs and blue jobs. We have designated, I guess we decide, like, he does the shopping. I don't touch the shopping and the meal planning. But that's evolved. The bins, no one's prepared to take that as sole responsibility. So where possible, I try and make sure that I'm training and away on a Thursday night in order to ensure that I don't have to do the bins. But no, whoever's here does the bins. And let's be honest, so the bins get out the house into the bins, and then I get up for the gym on a Friday morning and I take them out when I'm on the way to the gym.
Yeah, anything like taking them out, that's me. But we don't have pink and blue jobs. We have jobs my wife wants to do.
And then all the rest are yours. Yeah.
I don't have a voice. But
she sounds like she's got it sussed. She really does.
I don't.
Yeah, but, but I've watched
there was no compassion or sympathy or empathy there.
It's gone. I saw a comedian come up on, and I kind of want to say, I read an article. I didn't read an article. I watched a TikTok or an Instagram reel that was a comedian saying, when I think about how successful I could be if I had a wife, it's a female comedian. I'm like, yeah, I'd have taken over the world if I had a wife. Absolutely. But alas, I do not. I am a wife, and therefore...
And I've learned to keep my mouth shut in these conversations. I'm not going to say anything.
So you have learned. Well done.
Not good for my mental health, though.
Oh. But that compassion, that connection with people where they're at, listening to people's stories in a way that makes them feel seen or heard. That hierarchy of need, what a person needs, even if you cannot deliver their expectations. If somebody feels seen and heard in a conversation, it can completely change that conversation. And simply taking note of the expectations of that conversation right at the very beginning. What's the agenda? Simple things like saying to a parent carer, what's important to you right now? And then saying, would you mind if I talk to you about this, what I can see in this situation, how I view your child, what I think could be helpful? Because simply asking it as a question where they invite your opinion changes the power imbalance in that conversation.
Now, I could keep talking for hours, as everyone
We
listening
know that.
knows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try and wrap it up. Before we go, is there anything else you want to kind of add in? Any last tips?
I nearly swore then. No. I was going to call some of our courses. We have a whole range of courses on the Right Time. That's all around bridging the gap, communicating well with parent carers, dealing with complaints, dealing with trauma in parent carers, having difficult conversations or sharing life-changing news to people. And they all come back to connecting and being with people where they're at. I did consider titling it Don't Be a Knob, but we decided that might not get the funding from various places. So that's not what we call the courses. But if you don't want to be, then come on one of our courses and maybe we can give you some insights.
There's also that sort of thing of, I'm sending you on a course. What's the course called? Don't Be a Knob.
Yeah.
Hang on. Every time someone says something, my head just goes to the polar opposite of.
Yeah. Oh,
hang on. I know what you've just said there.
Yeah.
So, thank you for coming on the show today. Really enjoyed it. As always, you're going to get contact details, so you can find out all the stuff Rachel's up to. You can find out about her Don't Be a Knob course. So there's information you can link to Rachel's website, all the stuff she's doing, extra research, parent care trauma, Luke Clement's work on system-generated trauma, Rachel's podcast, The Skies We're Under, that video I mentioned, and also her book. And as always, you'll find those in the show notes, wherever you listen to the podcast, or also on the Zencast website. If you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics, or anything else, please message us through one of our social media accounts, or send an email to hello@thezencast.com. The Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and Eversense is one of our products, and it helps schools to share, celebrate, and engage with parents. Don't take my word for it, hear from one of our schools. And they use our software, and they said to us that teachers can communicate with home much more easily using Eversense, and this is proved to be much better than the previous homeschool communication books. Teachers can provide additional information to parents efficiently by responding via the app. Parents now send photos of students learning in the home community environment too. And also some of our students have requested access to their Eversense records so they can check on their own learning, which is fantastic. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through what Eversense does and what it can do for you. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Bye.